Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Moodle Academy webinar on Moodle 5.1 Unveiled, New Directory Structure and Routing System. I'm Tom Rawson, the Product Training Specialist at Moodle HQ. And today I'm joined by Adam Jenkins from Shizuoka Institute of Science and Technology. Adam is a teacher at the university and also a well-known Moodle administrator in the Moodle community in Japan. I've known Adam for many years and collaborated with him on various projects in Moodle, and he is an expert Moodle administrator. And today we're going to have a presentation by Adam about the new directory structure and routing system. So without further ado, Adam, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Tom. Hi, welcome to Moodle Academy. Okay, so today basically going to look at Moodle 5.1 and from an administrator standpoint exactly the biggest changes, the biggest three changes that have come up and what that means for administrators and what it means going forward as well as to what you have to look at. So just as a general overview, we're going to be having a quick look at the biggest one is the directory structure changes, and that is the biggest change by far. It's also perhaps the easiest to handle as an administrator. There's not a lot you have to do, but yeah, that is an unforgiving change. Composer has, well, the implementation exists, but there's not a lot that we have to do about that right now. And the router, if you don't want to do anything about it right now, you don't have to. But these two are both coming, and they're going to have implications down the line. So if we're going to look at these now, it would be a good time to start looking at them so that when they become more necessary in 5.2, 5.3, and beyond, we'll be prepared for those changes. So within each of these topics, basically, I'm going to look at explaining the what exactly each of these are, why they're actually happening, and what now. What do administrators have to concern themselves with now to make sure that they keep their Moodles functioning nicely. So let's get into it straight on with the directory structure changes. So the biggest change between Moodle 5.0 and 5.1 is that in 5.0 here you would see that they're inside of your Moodle. You download Moodle, you unzip the zip file, or you download it using Git and check out the 5.0 branch or the v5.0.0 or as you like, so the version of Moodle that you're after. And inside the Moodle directory, there are your files, and they're all publicly visible. They're the config.php is there as well, version.php. There are a few that are not visible, but also the course/view PHP and all of the PHP files that are needed to drive Moodle, they're all there inside of this single directory. So under that single directory. But there are also a bunch of PHP files in here that we don't really need to have visible. So if I just flick across to here, I've got one here. If I change directory I put my Moodle into /srv. So there's a Moodle 5.1 instance here. And if I look at the Moodle file base here, you can see I've got my config.php, and I've got a bunch of other files here that normally in 5.0 would be in this base directory, but now I'm speaking it backwards. The files in 5.1 that are publicly visible will all be in this public folder here. And so if I bring that back up here, here's the public folder there. And the advantage of that is that the other files in this base directory that should not be visible are not visible to the web server. So if I go to, previously, if I went to this file here, if I go to this folder here, if I go to cd admin and look inside of here, you can see that there's one directory, and it's the CLI directory, and that's for the PHP scripts that should be run from the command line. So these are PHP files that are not designed to be run by accessed from a web browser. They should not be visible. They should be just run using commands from the command line and should not actually be visible to, say, Nginx or Apache or anything like that. So now Moodle 5.1 actually puts the public folder as the files that should be served by the web browser and keeps those CLI-based ones out. So the summary of that on the slide is that the public-facing part of Moodle is now in a subdirectory. Now, it seems like a sort of a clunky way of doing it at first glance, but what you perhaps need to realize is that Moodle is basically released through GitHub and through a Git repository. And so you can't actually make a directory higher, on a higher level. You can, however, move things to lower levels. And so that's why it's done this particular way, where the public is now a subdirectory of the main Moodle repository, of the main zip file, of the main GitHub repository. It's there. So the what is it is that this change has happened, and now the web browser should be, the web server should be pointing to public, not to the root of the Moodle repository, and that's where the publicly visible files are. And the repository files that should not be visible are in the base directory of the repository. Now, why is it that we're doing that? Well, the main thing is because they should not be visible. So now they won't be visible. So that's the why is to keep those files that should not be visible hidden. And there are advantages to doing it that way, that you can have in the current 5.0 implementation, for example, you have a whole bunch of files for, say, the .git folder, the vendor folder. There are a whole bunch of extra folders that are necessary to keep Moodle working nice and healthy and allow you to, say, use Git to do your updates and upgrades and things like that. But you don't want them to be viewable via to the greater internet via a web browser. And if you misconfigure your server, then it's very easy to publish that information and expose your version, your Moodle version, and your other files that you should keep private. You can expose them accidentally very, very easily at the moment. So this hopefully will get a little bit more difficult because we'll only be exposing this public folder. That said, with the what now, so what admins will have to do is move the location, the root location, the web root in your web server software, your web server configuration. So if looking here, sorry, if I look here, so this is the base directory. This is the public folder here. CD public gets me into the public folder. So I'll make this a little bit wider. And inside here are all the folders that we would normally expect to see in a Moodle repository. This looks very, very similar to 5.0 or 4.5. But this directory, the public, all the way up to public, is what we should be letting the web server see. We should be seeing the root would change in this particular instance. If I were upgrading from 500, would change from what I've just highlighted there up to Moodle. The web root in the web server config should be all the way up to public. And so that is done. If you're using Nginx, that's done in the Nginx file configuration there. If you're using Apache, that's the root location for Apache is what's coming there. Now, there is another way to do this that I would absolutely recommend, and that is using symlinks. And I've seen symlinks being mentioned in the documentation and in the Moodle forums recently. And there were also some people who said, hey, I don't exactly know what these symlink things are. I made a video about that on my YouTube channel. There are plenty of resources around. Just Google symlink if you're unsure about it and learn how to use symlinks. It's not that hard. It's about a 5-minute learning experience, but symlinking is definitely going to be the best way to do this because default configurations then are far less likely to expose your Moodle directory here, the part that we want to keep hidden now, it's far less likely to be exposed if you put it in a separate folder, like I've got mine in /srv. If I go to /var/www, then you can see in here, I've actually got a symlink here for my Moodle 5.1. So if I do that in the list form, you can actually see that the symlink is pointing to, that's the full public file path. And I've got a symlink here, 501, that's pointing to that. So that's going to be the better way of putting your, well, this is for Apache configuration, this particular one. But if you want to have it in /var/www, where Apache likes to see things by default, then you can put a symlink in there that goes to the Moodle public. What that means is you can go cd Moodle 501, and in here it looks, these are all the public-facing files, public-facing Moodle files. Putting the entire Moodle folder in var www.html is going to be dangerous because of that default configuration, and the protection of, say, a symlink is not going to be there. Even if the symlink protection is not perfect, it's going to be better than putting your entire file, your entire folders inside of this one here in this folder here, which is the default for Apache web servers and things like that on, say, Debian installs. Okay, so that's the directory structure changes. Those changes are actually not that big. I will just quickly look over the chat where we might repeat them for the benefit. Yes. If you're running 4.5 to 5.0 with Apache and you'd like to secure your currently implications, there are Apache configs out there that will do what 5.1 is doing. Yep, pretty sure. Trying to paste. Okay, so we might see if we can find out how to share that later, but all right. There do not appear to be any. Is this the new public HTML? No, that's actually a different thing. Public HTML is usually I'm not going to have one on this thing. Public HTML is usually used on shared hosting type environments where what you have is you have a home folder, say /home/Adam or whatever your username for your host might be. And then under there, you would have a public HTML folder, which is exposed to the internet as that user's web directory, that user's web thing. So that is actually different to public HTML. The names are very similar because they actually do achieve very similar functions, but public HTML is directly usually an implementation of a module of, say, Apache web server, whereas this is a folder from Moodle. Okay, so that was a great question. Thank you very much, Nico. What about plugins? Will they work in 5.1? Yes, they will. And there's a little caveat though. When you upgrade, especially if you're upgrading using Git, which is awesome, and you absolutely should because it's so easy. When you check out the new version of Moodle, Git itself will not move any of your plugins. So you will have to go in afterwards, and you can actually find them very easily by just going to the base of the repository and typing git status, and that will give you a list of untracked files, and those will mostly be your plugins. So you can actually use that fairly quickly to have your short list of things you need to move into the public folder, and you just need to add public into the path that gets to them. So if it's, say, the attendance mod, that would be untracked files mod/attendance. You say, okay, mv move mod/attendance public/mod/attendance, and it will go all the way through to where it's supposed to be. So that's how that's done. The git fetch. Okay, got a couple more questions. The git fetch will be in the base directory. So the repository, if I go /srv is where I put mine in here. This Moodle directory here. Let's see, git status. This is where it will be, because this is the directory where I actually did my git pull. That's the directory you need to be. If you've done your git clone, the directory that resulted from you doing the git clone. So that's the one. This one here. It's also going to be the directory that has your config.php in it and has this git folder. So if you're concerned about it, look for the git folder. The git information is all going to be there. If it's not actually a big issue. If you get it wrong and go to cd public and just do git status, shouldn't be a big issue here either. Git's fairly smart and can figure out, hey, I'm not in the right directory, but that's okay. Just go look at the parent and see if the parent is a Git repository. And if it isn't, look one higher and things like that. And Git will just figure that out. So Git's really smart. Okay, so what about the new root engine is a question in the chat. That is great too, because that's where we're going to head. But first, we're going to make a stop by Composer land. And Composer is something that has its own what, why, and what now. But what's more impressive is the what next. So let's have a look at it. So what is Composer? Well, Composer is, quite simply put, a dependency manager for PHP. And what that means is, well, in Moodle, there are a whole bunch of plugins, and they all have prerequisites. They all have dependencies, code that they depend on. And if you're writing, say, a plugin, you would be better served by making use of these libraries in the Moodle core code so that you have that leg up. You're starting from a non-zero position. You've already got a lot of the work done for you. But you have to keep your code compatible with all of the dependencies, and dependencies have to stick around. They have to be there. You can't have a dependency suddenly disappear, or your code won't work anymore. So managing that is quite a hassle. If you're interested in what happens when you don't manage it, just Google dependency hell. It has a name, and it's absolutely no fun. So for developers in particular, this is the addition of a dependency manager will make it far, far easier to manage these dependencies. Now, does that actually help admins? Maybe not at first. Maybe not directly, but the why, as I've mentioned just down here below, is basically better code and end of line. That's ultimately why we're doing this. We're going to end up with better code, better dependency management, more compatibility. Maintenance is going to be easier. So for admins directly, it might not really affect us that much, but we can expect to perhaps see fewer bugs in the future. And that's a big benefit for everybody. The developers, their job should get easier. So good question just popped up in the chat. Is Composer a tool for admins or for developers? More for developers. Admins and DevOps guys can actually use it to deploy. You can actually use Composer to download a copy of the code from the Git repository and deploy it directly. But at least at the moment in Moodle, it is more so for developers, I would say. I've tried an install of Moodle using Composer to actually do the full download of the code from Git, and there was a lot of faffing about with keys. You have to set up your GitHub keys and things like that as well. It's not exactly ready for admins to use as a deployment tool yet. But this is, watch this space for the future, because things can become a lot easier once these tools, the appropriate tools, are deployed. So once the tools are there, it can be used for something, for deployment perhaps sometime in the future, 5.3, 6.2 or something like that. Sometime in the future, Composer might be usable as a deployment tool and make things a lot easier. So what you have to do now about it, really nothing. You will get this warning if you don't do anything about it, but it's just a warning. And seriously, who hasn't ignored a warning before, right? This Composer vendor directory not found just means that Composer, the first basic run of Composer saying, hey, Composer install, just add the vendor directory, that's not there. It just means that you're not ready for Composer yet. But Composer is not necessary for 5.1, so you have time to check out Composer, learn more about Composer before it's actually going to be necessary. So this warning's going to appear, and the warning perhaps is a little bit premature in its appearance, because I think it might be a little bit scary when you go to the environment report and see reports like this saying, hey, check. But it's not going to affect anything about how the Moodle actually works in 5.1. 5.2, 5.3 down the track, it almost certainly will become more important later. But for now, as an admin, you don't have to worry about it all that much. Again, though, you want to become ready for the future? Well, maybe look into it and keep an eye on it, and keep an eye on the development. Look on the Jira site and look at the issues like this one here. This one, 86889, is a issue about making the Composer installable via the web UI. And so installing Composer itself is... there are a couple of different ways it can be done, and it can be a little bit irritating. So the idea is, okay, if we can have it so that it's part of the web UI, when you first set up a Moodle site, it can just install it right there on the fly. Well, that could be pretty useful. Of course, there are some security concerns and things like that about you would have to have your web root, and your Moodle root would have to be writable for when you actually did that, but you could lock that down afterwards as well. So this kind of thought, I think, is... This is an example of Moodle HQ being really, really sensitive for people who do not have CLI access. And they're saying, hey, we want to keep it as inclusive as possible. And while we can support everybody, let's support everybody. And they're trying really hard for that. So applaud that effort. Maybe in the future that might even develop into a fully online updater like WordPress, Drupal, and Nextcloud have. They have where you can actually just update the code for those CMSs inside the web interface. But then again, there are other difficulties with that as well. For example, Nextcloud is, from my experience with Nextcloud in particular, it's quite common for the web browser version to time out, and so the upgrade does not complete. That's a big danger when you're doing anything with the web browser. So will this actually happen? Maybe, maybe not. I talked to a dev earlier today who was saying to me that this is not actually on the roadmap at the moment, but hey, never say never. Easier updating and upgrading should be something that we can expect in the future, and especially for those on shared hosting, especially with this particular issue from above. So that means that these things might be doable via the web UI, and that means less dependency on the command line. And then fewer incompatibilities because of the better dependency management. So fewer incompatibilities, fewer bugs, better plugin integration with core, especially regarding dependencies. That's what we're expecting for the future. And so watch this space. I do believe that this is going to be very helpful for the developers in particular, and they are ultimately the ones who are providing us with this lovely, lovely set of tools. So, yeah, anything we can do to make their life easier, we should definitely get on board and learn about Composer because, hey, that's where we need to be. Okay, at that, I don't see any fresh questions about the Composer stuff in are you mounting or symlink? Oh, no, that's Tom. Okay. Yes. Oh, and thank you, David. You put the link to the MDL. That link is in the chat now. So thank you very much for that. Okay. In that case, I'll just move on to the router, which is another piece that came in actually in Moodle 4.5. I think it made its debut. Might have even been as early as 4.4, some of the code. But it has actually been here since 4.5, but it doesn't really do anything yet. But again, this is, so we can actually move to the future, have better systems in the future. We're laying the groundwork now, so that we know what we can do. So quite simply put, what the router is, or the router, I'm Australian, so I like to say router, but a lot of, in particular, my American friends all say router. Anyway, what this will actually do is eventually be the one web request that serves all of Moodle. So r.php, in Drupal, they have a front controller as well, and the Drupal one I think is index. It's not index.php, but I think it's index.d.html. It's very, very close to what you'd typically expect as a document index file, but I think it's got a slight difference there. I don't know if somebody knows. You could put it in the chat. That would be cool because my memory's gone. But anyway, the idea is that one file gets all of the requests and processes all of the requests. So if you have all of the requests going through r.php, then r.php can look at them, can deal with them, can find out if the requests are well formed or if it's a hacker trying to just do something naughty. And if it's a hacker trying to do something naughty, or if it's someone looking for a file that doesn't exist or a requesting a resource that doesn't exist, it can give proper error messages. And this kind of thing sort of started a little bit with the error.php file. It was very similar in its implementation a while back, but now we're talking about doing it with every request that goes through into a Moodle. Now, of course, this doesn't happen yet. With some files it can, but at the moment it's not necessary. You can actually configure the router and give it a bit of a spin, but there's not a lot to see there. If I grab my little Moodle up here, so here's a Moodle 5.1 here. And what there is to see as well, I've made a little course here. And so if you look in here, whoa, I tell you, fresh install. You can see that I have in my thing over here, I've got the course view ID equals 2. So the course ID is 2 here. And if I delete the view.php part and say course 2 manage, that, I need a slash in there. Then that is going to be a request that goes through the router and arrives at this page. And this is just a course administration page here. And so with this, with the router actually working, that works like that. If I say manager and get the URL wrong, then the router is also going to be producing this 404 error page and giving me a nice link to contact site support if I think it's in error and stuff like that. So the handling of errors and things like that is going to be a lot better once we have the router in. And so this is one of the pages that you can actually check to see if your router is actually configured properly. If you go to a course to manage page like that, just any course ID that's a valid course ID, if you put in something else, it'll actually, well, I'm logged in as an admin, so it'll return some JSON, and that's what happens there. But if you don't, then not. And don't worry, that JSON is not returned if you're not logged in, so don't worry about that anymore. Right, so that's the router. That's what it does. So in the future, it's going to be the one r.php that handles all of the requests, probably with the exception of static files, probably. So CSS and JavaScript files and things like that will probably be gone as well. Oh, Paul Holden just noted that JSON was just fixed in Moodle 2 this week. Yeah, I think a fix to it being visible when not logged in was done several weeks back though as well. So, but yeah, that was something that I did notice, and I'm looking forward to the pull on Friday to implement that and try it out. So thank you, Paul. That's great. Great. Why is it? Why are we doing a router at all? Well, one of the big advantages is security. Again, like I was saying before, with the this goes hand in hand with the directory restructuring. But if you take those files that should only be accessible via the CLI, you take them out of there. If you can take all of the other files as well, then your security will improve. And this is because at the moment, while requests are not passed through r.php. In theory, what I could do is I could make my hacky PHP script, and I could just hide it somewhere in the Moodle code tree somewhere. And if I could sneak it in, perhaps with a nefarious plugin or something like that, then all I have to do is find go to the site with the path to that nefarious plugin, and boom, I've got direct access to the server potentially, even because nothing's going through r.php. There are no checks on the way to that request being processed. If everything's going through r.php, well, it can't sneak past like that. So for security, these things are going to be better. So if r.php notices something naughty, it will say, "You shall not pass." More Lord of the Rings references there. Anyway, the next thing is the simplicity of configuration. And yes, I'm serious about that. Although the router does not look incredibly simplistic in terms of it's not improving the configuration yet, that's because we actually are having to find a way to change our web configuration at the moment that will work with the router and will work without the router. And we've got to cover both of the bases until we get through the teething period, through the transition period to where we're actually going to have r.php taking care of everything. So for the next couple of Moodle versions, it's probably not going to be simpler. But after that, it probably will be. So that's something to look forward to in the future. Instead of having, for example, in Nginx, instead of having try files, URI with a slash, and then the router, you can just go straight to the router. And you don't really have to worry about any of the other configs that you currently do. And then the next one here, actually in the future, for the PHP block, you probably won't even need a try files at all, because there's no fallback requirement. So yeah, that will probably be a lot simpler in the future. Anyway, What it also does is lets the Moodle software handling all of the requests, which means when there's an error in particular, that will be handled a lot better in the future, and perhaps even better logging, better, if it triggers an alert that gets sent to the admin and stuff like that, that sort of stuff can all become a lot easier to handle within the Moodle software, rather than having to make sure that your server is configured to alert you or log those things themselves. So anyway, what now for us? Well, the one web request to serve them all means that web server configurations need to be changed, need to be updated. In Apache, this is actually a lot easier to do in Apache than Nginx. I typically find Nginx easier than Apache, but I have to give credit where it's due. The Apache fallback resource directive is a lot simpler. The Nginx one, you have to do the try files dance, and you have to actually pass on through the arguments if they exist. So that's why this args is at the back. That puts a question mark in there if there are get variables and the args themselves are passed through. So in Nginx, you need to actually do this inside of the PHP block as well, so it's a little bit more complex. But there is great documentation on docs.moodle.org and configuring the router directory there. Can I copy a link address, and I'll post that in the chat there. So if you look through that and read through that, then that should be all the information you really need to get the configuration right. But little caveat here, this is a work in progress. It is moving target. So it's likely to change. And in fact, adding I made an edit to the docs just last night, changing query string to this args format. And the reason I changed that was because otherwise you could have an empty question mark in the request and things like that, and that would be probably doesn't matter, but this is cleaner. In the requests that are passed on to r.php. So I don't know if that helps or not exactly, but it's a little bit cleaner perhaps than the other one. So that's what's in the documentation now. But the documentation is changing. It will evolve as needed. Some things we just do not know about in the documentation beforehand, so just keep coming back and keep checking it. If something doesn't behave the way you expect it, check the documentation, see if it matches, and if it doesn't, make an issue on the tracker and let us know about it so that everybody benefits. That would be good. So I'm not going to go through other server types. Apache and Nginx are basically the main two, so you need to change your web configuration for that. Full instructions for other server systems, like even IIS is represented in here in the docs. But after that, you will also have to change You'll also have to change your config.php to add a directive to tell Moodle that the router has been configured and is ready to go. And so that will alert Moodle to the idea that, hey, requests like course to manage, for example, these kind of requests can be processed, and it knows what to do with them once it's been told, yeah, you're good to go. Okay, if you cannot do that, if you don't have access to it, chances are you're on shared hosting, and configuring the fallbacks to r.php is something that is not allowed on your particular host. Well, scrap all of that and just put router configured equals false. Because in 5.1, it's no longer necessary. It was originally planned to be necessary for 5.1, but not anymore. So don't worry about that too much there. You can also just comment it out with 2 slashes because it's PHP directive there. Still, I would say the router is coming. So if you can't configure r.php as a fallback with your current web hosting solution, you're probably going to need to change that web hosting solution or contact them, open a support ticket, figure out how to actually get that functionality in there, because in the future you will need it. Sorry, there's a composer question, but I think I'll just leave off that for the moment until we've finished the router part, but we can loop back to those questions later if you like. Okay, so the next thing about the router is coming is that the web configurations will still keep changing going forward. So I would return back to the docs, to the forums, and keep going with the conversation, keep up to date with it, because though it will likely get simpler in future versions, in the meantime, during the transition, there's going to be some transitioning that happens, and things are going to change, and some uncertainty is to be expected while this changing period happens. Rumor has it that plugin installations in the future are also likely to change, again, together with the directory restructure, that the plugins might all end up in one directory, which would be pretty sweet. At the moment, you have to stick them. If it's a mod, it's got to go into mod. If it's a theme, it's got to go into theme. If it's a question type, it has to go into question/type in there. So not having to worry about where you're putting your plugins when you want to install them, that would be a lot simpler, but we're not quite there yet. And the last thing on the router in terms of what next is that change is inevitable, and it's not always bad. There are a lot of good things that will come out of having r.php in terms of security, stability, even performance. So as admins, I think we just have to say, yeah, this is the price we pay for having the best LMS in the world. So let's keep our end up. In the forums recently as well, there was a lot of talk about people on shared hosting. And this is not an official Moodle position by any means whatsoever. It's just my humble opinion. So take it with that big grain of salt if you need to. But my thoughts are that shared hosting environments are not supported by Moodle, because shared hosting environments are not really a thing. They're a concept, but every single shared hosting provider has a different set of restrictions and rules and what they're allowing their clients to do and what they're not allowing their clients to do. There is no shared hosting thing definition that you can actually go with. So my thoughts on that is, I looked at shared hosting when I started out using Moodle, and it was too hard for me. I couldn't hack it, and I just went to VPSs. So virtual servers, I just moved on. I actually started out on bare metal, and when I tried to shift to shared hosting, I just couldn't hack it. Shared hosting is way too hardcore for me. And I don't believe that there is a way that you can do that. I have recently been seeing about people talking about their shared hosting provider requires that they use PHP 5.6 and they can't upgrade beyond 5.6, PHP 5. Yeah, well, you're not going to be running on Moodle on that, so it's just not going to be compatible, so that's the problem. But not being supported by Moodle does not necessarily mean it's the end of the world. It doesn't mean that you can't use Moodle on shared hosting, and to the contrary, the web server configurations need to be changed and things like that, and if you can prepare yourself for the future, great. But if you cannot do that on your current shared hosting situation, you can find one that does. So ultimately, I think about people on shared hosting, you're doomed. But maybe not doomed in the sense of destruction, but doomed as in Doom, the game. I don't know how many people are of the same upbringing as I am and grew up through this particular era, but Doom, a shooting game, 1993, was very, very famous and popular around the turn of the century. and has been ported to so many different devices since then. There's a big meme thing going for can it run Doom, and Apple Watches and pianos and all sorts of devices can run Doom. So in this respect, I think Moodle is you're doomed in that you need to start asking yourself, can you run Moodle on it instead of can you run Doom on it? And Moodle, well, Doom, you could run it on, this is a little thing from Adafruit. They make this tiny little device for running Doom. It's perhaps the smallest thing that can run Doom. But then again, I mean, that's Doom running on an ATM, on an old Super Mario Brothers handheld game. That's it on an Apple Watch. That's it on an old Kodak digital camera from back in the day. There's it on a calculator. And this one finally, this is it running on a printer. Why would you want to run a Doom on a printer? I have no idea, but the fact is that Doom running on all these different devices, where I'm sure Doom ID software has not provided support for these ports, right? But hey, router on shared hosting, well, you prepare yourself and you can get it there. I'm sure you can do it. So you just need to, put in a little bit of effort to actually find out how to actually do it. And if you do use shared hosting, and if you do find out how to do it, come back to the forums, please, and post about it and tell everyone your story, because, hey, there are a whole bunch of other people out there who want to hear that story. So sharing is caring. Right? So shared hosting, not a single thing and can't really be supported, but I admire the way that Moodle HQ tries really, really hard to make sure that the tools are there to allow people on shared hosting to doom their Moodles. I don't think there's anything more that Moodle HQ can actually do. The documentation is fantastic. There's a whole bunch of information in the docs about shared hosting as well. My personal take is it's not really supported because it's not a thing that can be supported. But if you're on shared hosting, yes, you can actually get it to work. You're probably just going to have to put a little bit more effort in. So that's my hot take on that. So, wrapping up, and question time will just be in a moment after this, because I have two announcements I would like to make beforehand. But directory structure changes have happened. The public folder is there, and that's where you need to point your web server. That is the big one for 5.1 that admins have to deal with right away. The composer and the router, they are coming, and they're ready. You're ready to play with them right now. You can get yourself a 5.1 install and start playing with both the composer and the router. You can even use composer to actually download the Moodle yourself, and I would advise everybody to give it a try. Not in production, but on some practice server, a little virtual machine or a Vagrant or something like that. Give it a try, because you'll just learn more about it and be better prepared for the future. The changes are coming to make Moodle more secure, reliable, performant, and generally better. So let's welcome those changes with open arms so that we are ready for the future and prepare ourselves and let the devs have a really, a better environment to develop in, and everybody helping each other. That's what the Moodle community is all about, right? So let's get there. Okay, just before I head to questions, I'm just going to do two small announcements. First is, I'm on YouTube. A lot of you probably already know this, and yes, so I decided to add in a quick shameless plug to this. Let me see. I will even copy the link address and post it into the chat there so that it hangs out for you. Oh, thank you very much, Alex. That is wonderful. And the next one that is not so shameless is Moodle Moot Japan 2026 is coming. We're hosting it in Shizuoka, in my neck of the woods, next February, and well, February to March, February 27th to March 1st, and that's going to be in Shizuoka, right next to Mount Fuji. So please come on over and say hello. Don't be a stranger, especially if you're in the neighborhood. We are focusing a lot more on all domains, and especially things like the stack question type and STEM. So we're going to have two stack giants, Yasuyuki Nakamura and Chris Sanguin. Chris Sanguin made the Stack Pro plugin, so he's absolutely awesome as well. If you've ever seen him present, he's fantastic. His counterpart in Japan is Nakamura Sensei. He's just fantastic. He actually did a Moodle Academy webinar in Japanese about the stack question type a couple of months back as well. So he's an absolute giant in stack, and I've attended several of his webinars before as well, and he's fantastic. He also speaks really good English too. So if you come to the conference and see him, don't be shy. Go out and say hello. Also, we've got Machiko Yagi, who's going to be talking about nursing education, and she's perhaps one of she's just awesome all over the medical university, medical education stuff, and she's traveled across Japan to actually help other universities, other than Jichi Medical University as well, with developing their nursing plugins using Moodle, nursing programs using Moodle and everything. So she's fantastic about that. And we've got Gina Alioto coming from Moodle HQ, and she'll be talking a lot about task-based learning and rubrics. So there is something on this program for absolutely everyone. We've got villages, we've got Moodle Innovation Awards for plugins and Open Courseware Awards. You can submit and win a prize. It's awesome. So please come on over. Okay, so that's not on the topic, but back to the topic. If there are any more questions, I will now perhaps be a little bit less noisy and more listening to your questions. So what are your questions? Okay, so looking through that, Doom was fantastic. Absolutely it was. Andre asks, will we be able to run Moodle on printers? Never say never. Probably easier than shared hosting. So let's make it happen. Let's see. There's a link for... yes, I've seen that one. I don't know if I actually believe the one about a programmer figured out how to play Doom on a pregnancy test. I'm not sure if I believe it, but I'm not sure I completely doubt it either. So anyway, that's another great one, yeah. Raspberry Pi, yep, absolutely. You can run Moodle on a Raspberry Pi. I have done that several times. I even once I actually installed Moodle Box, which is very, very easy to do, and then also added an AI to the same Raspberry Pi, which really is working it really, really hard. But hey, it worked. So yeah, I doomed my Raspberry Pi, you could say. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I will go back one because I will put this link in the chat as well. I just noticed I hadn't done that yet. So there you go. That's the link to Moodle Japan. Will we be able to run Moodle on Notion? Notion. Not sure exactly what you're meaning by Notion. Are you talking about that automation system? The blanking for what? The AI workspace that works for you. And that one. Yeah, I don't know. Probably. Moodle on Docker and Kates, yes, it absolutely exists, already does, and a lot of people do. You do need, so persistent storage and things like that with a couple of volumes and stuff like that added, and yeah, it absolutely can be done. Docker, Kates, Kubernetes, all of that. It's definitely doable, and I'm pretty sure if you check out, there's a signal group for large scale Moodle implementations. If you look for those guys, if you find those guys, I'm almost certain someone in there would be using Kubernetes. It's almost certain. So, yeah, the Moodle Docker for devs as well. I wouldn't use the dev one for production, but then again, I don't really see a matrix group. Yeah, yes. Okay. Oh, thank you, Alex. Yes, that is fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, the big Moodle. Huh? Oh, great. Yeah. So those guys, there's got to be someone in there using Kubernetes, right? Do other people call it Kates? I sometimes call it Kates, but that might just be me being an airhead. Yeah. Anyone, by the way, feel free to open up your mic and ask me a question or tell me what I got wrong or something. That would be cool too. Gemma, thank you for this session. Help me in preparing my checklist for upgrade steps for 5.1. Yeah, actually, speaking of which, there's a wealth of documentation in here. Here's configuring the router one, but there is also upgrading here, this upgrading page as well. This is a great one for that checklist type documentation, right? Because it will actually say, check the requirements. And I've actually when I had a look at this, when I first discovered this page, I thought, wow, this is your play-by-play. This is what you really want to follow and make sure that you don't miss anything. Check the requirements in server environment. That's always a good first step. Making sure everything is all Git pulled and updated as high as you possibly can on your current branch or version before trying to upgrade. Test on a copy. Take your backups. Check for plugin updates and stuff like that. Put your site into maintenance mode and all this sort of stuff. It's your step-by-step playback. And look, there's the documentation right on shared hosting. Right there. Look, this is the symlink stuff. This is actually instructions about how to make the symlinks as well. I mean, it's all there. Seriously, we are so spoiled by the guys who are making these documents. So they do such a great job on it. So absolutely big kudos to these guys. Even if you want to run it side by side with a WordPress, look at that. So yeah, that's the play-by-play right there in the documentation. It's a good overview right there. I'm not spotting any more questions. Have I missed some, Tom, or?
No, I think you've got everything there, Adam. Why don't we wrap up our session? What do you say?
Sure. Unless there's somebody else want to put their hand up or something. Final call. Okay, well, I'll pull my window out of the way. Mary, thank you for adding the link to the upgrading. That's the one that I was just showing there, is the link that Mary just shared.
My pleasure.
That's great. Okay.
All right, why don't you pop to the next slide there, Adam, and I'll take it from there, okay?
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much, Adam, for this very informative presentation. And to everybody. So if you've enjoyed this session, we'd love you to consider getting involved further and help us grow by contributing to the development of Moodle Academy. You can do this by visiting our Get Involved course, which you'll find on the front page of the Moodle Academy site. You can suggest ideas for new webinars and courses, and you can vote on ideas that have been suggested by others already. We're always on the lookout for community members to help present webinars and co-create short online courses. And we'd love your help making Moodle Academy more inclusive. So if you're able to, please go to our Translate Moodle Academy course and get started with helping us translate our courses and webinars into other languages. And of course, please help spread the word about Moodle Academy by telling your colleagues about the courses we offer and the webinars we run. When you complete a course, you'll earn a badge. Educators and administrators might like to think about getting Moodle qualified with the Moodle Educator qualification or the Moodle Administrator qualification. Learn more about these qualifications from the Moodle qualifications block on the Academy homepage. Hey, thank you for joining us today. I hope you found this useful. And if you haven't already, join in the conversations on the Moodle.org community forums, where I hope to see you again, as well as in our upcoming webinars.